I've got David Meikle on today, and we have a really interesting podcast. We've talked before, and you can look that one up in the past, but David is here. Basically, we're doing a one-man show for him like we do pretty much every year, depending on how busy he is. And he's been a very busy individual of late, extremely. And that's what we're going to talk about is why he's been so busy and what's going on. So, David, thank you for coming in. You're dropping off paintings, and I'm making you stay late for a podcast that's going to drop later. But yeah, what's going on with this movie that you're doing?
Well, I was in the middle of a big mural project last year. Actually, it was a project I'd been working on for at least 3 years to that point, and I was in the middle of just doing the final paintings. I had 12 sections to do. They were 15 feet tall, about 11 feet wide. The first one I started out, I was going to do one a month. I had 12 of them to do. I was going to do one a month. So the first one took about a month and a half, and so I was already a little bit behind. The second one, about a month and a half. So then I was really behind. And so then March comes, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to really get going on this. And I get an email from a movie producer who's saying, the director really likes your work, and he wants to have you do something for this movie he's working on. And I kind of thought, well, oh boy, I'm in the middle of this mural, and this probably is going to be something local that I'm not going to have time to do, but I got to call him back. I got to find out what this is. And so then I call him, and I signed. He said, well, you need to sign a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA. And so I did. And then he said, well, the director is Wes Anderson. And I was like, whoa.
And that had to be kind of a mind blower, right? I mean, you don't expect that, right?
Yeah. And what was odd about that was, and I had seen, The Life Aquatic, because I'm a Bill Murray fan, but I had a few years before, I have a friend who's a filmmaker, and he had a birthday party. He threw a birthday party for his wife, and he said, everybody who comes to the party needs to dress up as a Wes Anderson character. And so I really hadn't seen, besides The Life Aquatic, I hadn't seen any of his other movies, but everybody came dressed up as a Wes Anderson character. So
what was yours?
Well, I was Steve Zissou, of course, and there were like 5 other Steve Zissous there. And so, but I realized there's, something to this guy, and people who know film, they love Wes Anderson movies. So, of course I said yes, because you don't turn down these kind of opportunities. And I went and I watched all of his films just to kind of get us. Yeah.
Did you have a favorite besides the one with Bill Murray in?
I still like The Life Aquatic, but I think the Moonrise Kingdom I really enjoyed. And the new one, we went and saw The French Dispatch, and I thought that was an amazing movie. I really enjoyed that a lot. So the Grand Budapest Hotel, of course.
Also a favorite.
Yeah. But I looked at, I realized, the way he composes imagery and, even uses typography, everything's very deliberate and, thought out. And so it was an amazing opportunity to work with somebody like that. And the amazing thing about this experience is I did get to work with him directly. And that was what the producer kind of said is, he wants to work with you directly. Right. I'm not working with necessarily his production, designers or the art directors. Right. I'm working with him.
What was that like? That has to be in a way, it has to be somewhat intimidating, I would think.
Well, let me, so I do the first sketch I sent off, I did a little oil painting sketch, and, I put a lot of work into that because, and I just basically had to send it off, and I spent a lot of time composing the, the way I explained it, because I wanted to look like I, was intelligent, and
right,
and so and you just send it off, and you don't know what's going to happen. And and he came back, of course he was very encouraging, but he had some other things in mind, and they warned me going into it that there would be a lot of notes, and this is where my background, working as an art director, I'm used to having a lot of times people coming and needing changes and things, and so I had to kind of listen to what he was wanting and make sure that it's his vision, and I'm there to help his vision. So
Right now, and he had found you. Did he find you because of your state signs, or do you know?
No, I think he actually found me from, one of the ads you took out
Oh,
from,
nice.
I think it might have been that big Grand Canyon
Oh,
painting,
could
that
be.
9 foot by 5 foot Grand Canyon piece. Because I asked him after I did some of the work. I said, I asked the producer, how did you guys find me? And he said, well, we saw this ad and he really liked your work,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we started keeping a file on you, and you're kind of like, what?
Yeah, there's a file in Wes Anderson's
Yeah,
book for you.
because like I've mentioned to you, like as an artist, you never get a sense of people looking at your artwork.
Yes.
You don't know if people like it or not. It's nice when they buy your work, and I think you get a sense that they like that, obviously, but you don't get a sense of people looking at your artwork.
Right. Well, and you did the another movie. It was a TV show, Last Man.
Oh, the last Man on Earth.
Yes, Last Man on Earth, right?
So I had done the Welcome to Utah signs, and that was sort of in my more commercial style. That was a digital style I put together in Adobe Illustrator. So I draw the shapes by hand and piece them together. But I use the computer to create that. But what's funny though is I think he was also, I'd sent some of my work, or he'd seen also the painting I did of the billboard sign in the landscape, and
Yes.
he was really like, I think he liked that idea of the painting of a billboard.
Right. I like that idea.
So my wife says, I told you that was what you should do, a painting of your billboard, and sure enough that helped. But I think he was drawn to that idea, and so then I think some of that kind of found its way into the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that interesting how a single painting can motivate somebody and move them and go, oh, I can see this as part of my thematic for what I want to do. Josh Elliott painting did that for me on my last book, The Candy Man. He did a painting called the Blue Chair, which I own. And
Yeah.
it literally was the impetus. I go, I can see a whole book around this painting. And he may have, I don't know that, but he may have felt something like, I can see something here as a setting, as a beginning, an important setting,
Yeah.
because of that painting that you did of a billboard in front of the actual, another painting that you do of the landscape.
Yeah. Well, and so he had seen, the Utah billboards, and so he wanted that kind of feel, at least with the typography too. So if you'll notice in one of the billboards, I think that's in the movie, that typography is kind of based on
It does look like
the
it.
Utah billboard. So he has a woman named Erica Dorn who did all of the the design work for Isle of Dogs, and she's an amazing designer. And so I kind of worked with her on, she did the typography on that, but it was it was based on those Utah billboards.
Yeah. Anytime you enter Utah, right, from anywhere, there's one of your paintings, right?
Yeah.
Because I've stopped every time and taken a photo. I have a bunch of me in front of
I even stuck my name on there too.
Oh, yeah?
I have a digital signature that I put on my graphic
Yes.
artwork, and so I left that signature on there too. So I tell people who have the last name Meikle is that their name's all on those billboards.
And what about, would that be on any of these in the movie, or you probably don't even know?
Well, he asked me not to. I think one of the original sketches, I scratched a little Meikle
Right.
on there, and he said, don't sign those, but you'll get a credit
at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure how that's gonna, what'll happen with that, but
And you did like 8 paintings for the movie?
So I ended up doing 7. So first one was this kind of billboard image that they used, but I guess he liked the process so much that he found a way to do 2 more, because originally it was just going to be the one. And so again, going back to this mural project, because I'm like trying to get this done and then work on this mural. And then
And they
come back and then it was like, okay, we've got another one for you to do. And then, there was a third one to do. And then, so I got done with those. I kind of got the mural back on track. And then it was about a September, and they were like, well, we tried something and it didn't work out. Can you come up with 4 more paintings? And so, but they had a really tight turnaround on that. So I ended up doing 7 total. Now I'm not sure what will end up in the movie, or how they'll all be seen, but
Right.
we and those I'd kind of arranged with, he would keep those originals. So I've sent those off to him. He owns them. And so then, I'm, a year later, September, I've got your show I'm gearing up for. And,
right.
And they come back and they're like, well, we need to do some marketing for this movie. And so we need an image for, maybe the movie poster.
Right.
So I started in September working on a vertical piece, and we talked about how hard verticals are
right.
for landscape painters, and that we went back and forth a lot to come up with something that I think would hopefully help sell the movie.
And are you going back and forth with him?
Yeah, by email, and he's very nice to work with. He hasn't been a jerk at all in any of this, or made you feel like you're
right.
Not cool enough or not capable enough, but
right.
but he will see things and he'll be like, no, that's not right, you maybe try this or think about that. And so I'm trying to do what he needs, because it's his film.
Right, exactly. And you've done other things like that. You did the VP when they did the debate.
I did
all that stuff,
VP
right?
Debate. One project that was really exciting last year was the football team. They're going to be in the Rose Bowl again this year. They won the Pac-12.
Right.
Last year at that, for Veterans Day, they play in like uniforms. They have a military appreciation game, and so somebody had realized there's a USS Salt Lake City that existed, before World War II. It was a heavy cruiser that was, I think it was built in the late 20s, and it had this amazing record in World War II. So they were going to play in these uniforms dedicated to the USS Salt Lake City. And they had these hand-painted helmets. And everybody thinks I did the helmets, but I did the story behind the ship. And I was able to do 6 paintings that told the story of the USS Salt Lake City. And so it would, it was there during the Doolittle raid. It was one of the ships that escorted the carrier that flew off the planes. And then it was also, it fought on Guadalcanal campaign. It fought a big battle up in the Aleutians. And then it was at Iwo Jima when they raised the flag.
Wow.
And so I thought that's an amazing story to be there at the Doolittle raid, and then when they raised the flag at Iwo Jima.
Right.
And it's a story that has to be told visually. I mean, you can kind of, talk about it, but to show the pictures that tell the story. So I was able to do, a bunch of, smaller paintings that told the story visually, and that was just like an amazing experience.
And that was for who that you were doing that for?
So our office was in charge of telling the story of the ship. So we produced a video that was played at halftime at the game, and they used these paintings, and I kind of helped craft the story. The creative director, he's a better writer than me, so I wrote out what happened, and then he made it sound better. But then we have a website that where we kind of have these sections.
And you were doing all this at the same time you're doing the Wes Anderson movie.
Yes.
The other big murals.
There was one point where it was in May where I was working on all 3 at once.
Oh, wow.
So
your wife never saw it.
I was doing the Wes Anderson film, I was doing the mural, and then I was doing these for my job at the University of Utah.
Yeah. And so what do you think is going to be like to go to that movie? First of all, do you know if you get to go to the premiere or anything like that?
Everybody asks me that, but I haven't kind of dared to ask if how that works, or
you should ask.
My wife said, "Yeah, you need to,
Yeah.
So we'll.
No, your wife's right again.
Of course,
you should go do it because it's fun, it's interesting, and you're an important component. You're the poster for it. You're the backdrops for things, and clearly it's the setting that he, as the director and the creative juice for this movie, sees as it being a very important part. I mean, worst he can say, I guess, is no. Right?
Yeah.
And if not, you can go with all your buddies and friends and Salt Lake City.
Well, it's mid-June. I think it's up against The Flash, and then Indiana Jones comes out next week. But
can you say the name of the? Well, by the time this airs, the movie will be coming out.
Asteroid City.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
And so, what do you think is going to be like to see that on big screen in such an important movie with it's got every major star in Hollywood's in this
I
movie.
think it'll be surreal. I think as an artist, you always look at your work and you're like, oh, did I smooth out the edges enough? Or, does that look,
Right.
for me, does that look real enough?
Right.
And it's like, but I think you have to just kind of, he was happy. I think he was happy with the work. He asked to do, me to do more. And, with the movie poster, he, sent a message saying he was really happy. So, you just have to be like, okay, I did my best, and
Right. I did my job.
Yeah.
And it's kind of unusual when you think about, what you do. A lot of people would think of you as a very realistic, tight landscape painter. That's not really the whole truth. And how does that add up to how you see it when you see, okay, well, look what I'm doing now?
Yeah. Well, and this is definitely a collaboration. I mean,
Right.
these are
No, I get
definitely
it.
scenes that I wouldn't have painted on my own.
Right.
But he came to me because of, what I did. And then, I was able to, I think produce hopefully what he had in mind.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
But I think when you look at him, you'll be like, well, they look like Dave's work, but, compositionally or the scene is not something I would have just come up
Right.
with,
it's
his vision.
And that's his movie, right?
Yeah.
So he made it. He used you as how he would use any actor, right?
Yeah.
The actors he has a vision for them as well. That's why everyone loves his movies. That's why they're very much, he has a huge fan base because, when you see one of his movies, it has a similar, quirky, unique vision.
Yeah, he has a definitely point of view and a visual style, and I
Yes.
kind of learned the word auteur that gets used with him a lot. And it's I had to look it up.
Yeah.
But it's somebody who has a very unique but identifiable vision. So you look at these frames and you can always tell it's his
Yeah,
work.
that's right. They are. Yeah, I mean, like the Hotel Budapest one, that to me was like classic. I mean, what a unique movie. I can hardly wait to see this one, actually. I mean, it's a bonus to...
Well, and, he usually, does things that are set in Europe. And
Right.
so, this, I think, is interesting that he's dealing with the American West.
Right.
And I think he's probably playing up with some, maybe stereotypes or perceptions of what the West is or what Western life is, in the 50s.
Yeah.
But it's stuff that I think we've experienced or can relate to.
Yeah. And it just shows you how the West never goes away, right?
Yeah.
It's uniquely American, right? And I don't see Western art, native art, ever leaving the scene because it is truly what American culture is. And it's interesting that, yeah, you're right. He does usually do more European type settings and that, but he's focused on the West.
But I think there's an appreciation in Europe of
for sure.
the West.
Yeah,
I was
absolutely.
kind of surprised years ago to find out, in Germany, I think there's a big
There's a book that they all read.
But they love that notion of the the American West, and people come out to see it and experience it. And I know that I know the museum that was on the University of Utah campus for a long time, they really didn't collect American Western work for that museum, and I think people would show up from Europe going to the museum and being like, well, where's the Western paintings?
Right.
And so I think they've added some to accommodate that, but it's definitely kind of like our culture.
Yes. You think that these paintings that are going to be in here could spur an interest in Western painting and landscape painting specifically, because that's what you are primarily. You're a landscape painter.
I think so. I mean, I think there's something universal about landscapes, and especially like Western landscape. I mean, for me, it's just painting what you know. And what I actually tried to do with these images, though, is I tried to incorporate places that I knew. So even though I was given, reference material and things that they had in mind, I tried to incorporate real places in these. So even though they might look like they're kind of fantastic and like not a place you would easily identify, I can point to a location and say, this is where I got the idea for this landscape. So that's really what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to portray what I know and what I love, and the landscape that I grew up in.
Yeah. You're from Utah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I saw your work kind of like Wes Anderson. He saw it on one of our ads, whatever. I saw it in those big malls, in that big mall in Salt Lake City, where you have those huge murals. What's the name of that mall?
The City Creek.
Yeah, that was it.
Center,
They're monster.
yeah.
How big are those things?
Well, that was 23 feet by 10 feet tall. So.
Yeah, I remember walking in. I'll never forget seeing them and going, wow, who is this person? How can they do this? And I don't know who this is. And that's when I had asked the curator at the museum. I said, who is this person that did these? They're fantastic. And
well, in fact, Donna, she had told me I think she was hired by the museum because of her knowledge of Western art, because they kind of didn't have that,
right,
in their repertoire,
yes.
So that's how.
Yeah. And I said, please tell him fantastic. Yeah. She goes, oh yeah. And she told me it's David Meikle and he's local and he's primarily local galleries. I think that was probably true at that point, maybe. And then you did the smartest thing I've ever had done, I think, is you followed up, because I didn't, of course, but you followed up with a beautiful brochure. It was a hand done brochure with beautiful photographs laid out. And I was like, that's the guy. That's the one. I was like, I'm all in.
Well, that was my graphic design training being put to use, because we actually took classes, in design school for, a portfolio. So how you would present, but it basically was just a sketchbook, that I put a cover on. I got some interesting paper and glued it on, and then glued on, you're building a handmade portfolio, but
that's right.
But I was kind of using those design skills. And I always tell people that, a design degree is very helpful for a fine art career.
Yes. Yeah, it was there.
Even though they're very different, graphic design, illustration, and fine art are very different fields, I still see there's a lot of crossover.
Yes.
A lot of the skill sets or the applications are, similar, or you can find applications where you can use that.
Well, that solidified you getting into the gallery. I knew at that point when I literally just saw those pieces, I would represent you. But because we just get busy in life and things happen, I go on, I'm doing my thing. And, I would have circled around again, I'm sure, maybe too late for me. I might have not been on the right side of the equation, but because you took the initiative and sent those to me, said, yeah, Donna said that you like my stuff and here's some things. I was like, oh yeah, this is, wow, professional all the way. So,
well, you always just try, as an artist, you try and figure out, what you can do that makes you stand out.
That did.
A little bit. But I mean, a lot of times, again, as I've said before, a Utah landscape painter, it's a crowded field.
It is.
There. So
and there's a lot of good ones, really good ones.
Really good. There's a lot of my friends,
Smith. Yep.
They're amazing. They're amazing painters. They do great work. There's a lot of young painters, that
Brett Allen Johnson.
That are doing incredible
Russell
work.
Case. I mean, let's just keep them going.
Yeah. So how do you stand out from that crowd? And that's what my wife was saying, when I got this job too with Wes, is like, why did he pick you? Like, out of all of the landscape painters there are in the West or in the world, or, there's a lot of people that have amazing skills. Why did he settle on me? And that's a hard question to say. I think, I asked what it was. And the interesting thing was they said it was the detail that I put in. And I kind of chuckled because, every art teacher I've had, when they look at my work, they're always like, okay, you need to edit, you need to take stuff out, an artist needs to, it needs to be more simplified, and so I've always tried to find that balance of like, how do you put in detail, but how do you have like strong design?
Yes.
And how do you not lose the energy of paint, when you, like with a sketch, there's a sort of a nice, gesture when you have, abstract work or, paint that's kind of thrown on, even that's realistic, but when it's loose, there's an energy to it. How do you not kill it when you're like putting in all of that detail?
Right.
But on the other hand, I can't not put in the detail. I can't not have it look realistic. And I think that was what drew him to my work
Well,
was
and,
the
yeah, and that
detail.
painting that he saw in our ad, that was that 4 by 8 foot painting, right? I'm sure, right?
That Grand Canyon,
Yeah.
I think that's what they said, but it was, that had a lot of
It had a lot of
detail.
Yeah,
Detail,
it
but
was an amazing painting. I remember that because you said, "Well," I go, "I like big paintings." You go, "How big?" I go, "There is no limit."
but I had fun doing it too. It
Yeah.
wasn't, it wasn't a chore
No,
with
I'm sure
that.
not.
I enjoy figuring out how the structure of the landscape is, and so, but I think to me it's like I have to have that. I have to have that in there, and that's why. I know that I'm influenced by like Maynard Dixon, but he was a master at just like putting a color value in and leaving it alone and having a perfect shape. And
Right.
I put too much, like, I don't think you'll put my work together with Maynard
No.
Dixon, and I don't,
No.
I won't get mistaken.
No, other than your
for him.
clouds can be very, which is a great compliment. I mean, because he was one of the best ever.
Absolutely. And you look at how that structure is, but I do, I am looking for, what are all of the shapes that are happening. And so I do tend to, put in that detail.
Yeah. No, I actually think you're one of the most underrated landscape painters there are. No, it's true. I do. I think you're just terrific and amazing. And, part of it is that you also do another job, and to pay for healthcare and things like that. And it makes it difficult for you to do more than what you can do.
Well, since having the solo show, in 2020, it's been a kind of a hectic, couple years, doing this big mural for the LDS Church. It was for the St. George Temple.
Yeah.
And then, working on this movie, and then another show.
Yeah, I'm amazed you didn't back out actually of the show, just going, I can't do it.
Well, I think that's sort of the professional part of me that's like, I'm here to paint. And
Yeah.
This is what and working on these kind of paintings, or what I love with doing these kind of shows is like, these are paintings that I want to do. They don't necessarily have a client, they don't have a brief, they don't have an expectation. It's like, what can I do that's interesting to me? And so you do get kind of a momentum going when you're working on a show like this. And
that creative juice flows. Yeah, it's freeing, I'm sure. I mean, it's hard work, but
it's hard work, but I enjoy this. And I commissions are hard for me because it's not that I don't mind, working with people, but it's hard, I think, sometimes meeting other people's expectations.
Yeah.
And they might have a scene in mind, that you're just not seeing.
Right.
And so, I much prefer this kind of a format where it's like, okay, I want to do something that has a lot of sky, a lot of clouds, a lot of color. I want to have these kind of ratios in the painting, because when people start coming in and saying, well, can you move it up like this, or you didn't quite get that looking right, the second that happens, you start like pulling back, and I know as a professional you get used to that, but I know inside you're kind of just like, look, I'm the artist. I know how to do this. I've done this for a long time. So, don't tell me how to do my job, And it's different with, I think, when you're drawing and painting as opposed to design. I'm used to having people come in and say, well, your layout, you need to take this stuff out. This photograph needs to move over here, and I can just do that. But when it's your drawing, when it's your handwork, that does get hard when they say, well, that's not correct, and you're like, well, that was in the reference. And I think that's where you asked me before why I don't do people, and I think partly that's like, I can draw people,
I'm sure,
and I can make them look pretty close, but it's that, well, what's going on with the mouth? How come how come that expression doesn't look quite and that's how they look, but they I'm probably not that good at flattering the people, and that's what you have if you're going to be a portrait painter. You have to flatter.
You can't do a Peter Hurt of LBJ and he goes, this is horrific, or Winston Churchill who burns the piece.
An episode of The Crown was this like classic, because that was how he was.
If you've ever seen the painting, that's exactly, I mean, he does look like kind of an old man that's a clump of potatoes.
And I think that's probably where I would end up, is I would be showing people more like how they
really look.
how they really look. Because that's the realism that I'm trying to get to,
Yeah, you had to work with one of the greatest directors ever and follow their vision too. That had to be daunting.
Well, again, you kind of switch gears, like, you go into your professional kind of, commercial artist mode, and going into it knowing I have a job to do, and it's his movie, it's his vision.
Right.
He's come to me because of what I bring to the table, but in the end of the day, it's his money, it's his movie, and I only want to get him what he wants. And I think you have to buy into what he's doing. And I did that early on. I was familiar with his movies, and I knew he was somebody that a lot of people respected. And so when he comes back and says, okay, your idea for this isn't right, I can be like, okay, I'm willing to, listen to what you want.
Right.
I think a lot of times, other times it's sort of not that, where people are like, well, I don't like the color green. And,
Right. When you're doing a landscape that they want of some mountain, you're like, well, that's how I paint it.
Yeah.
I hate doing commissions actually with artists, because I know artists don't like it, and trying to find that line of where it's going to work. What I got to the point is saying to clients, listen, you want a commission, that's fine. But you want the best painting, let the artist do what they do.
Yeah.
You can give them some very broad, general ideas, but don't tell them you want a rainbow and, this and that, because you're not going to get the best work.
Well, that's what I've appreciated working with you is, kind of that idea that just, where you said, just bring your best.
Yeah. I want to see your A game. I don't care what the subject matter is.
Because I have been places where it's like, they love those commissions, because I think they're like, oh, well, it's money, I can get that. And they want to get, they want to get the time of day, the time of the season. And you're kind of like, well, how am I going to go? Am I going to have to camp out in front of this mountain in winter just to get the, and I think, you could in the right situation, but most of the time it's like, I'm collecting stuff that's interesting to me. And then when it comes time, I can distill that into a painting and into something that I want to do. But when you're forced into, that other situation, then it's risky.
Yeah.
Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't.
Sometimes they do not work, and they're terribly do not work because you've pressured the artist to do something that he or she is not comfortable trying to produce. So they're struggling to make the painting. Yeah, I just kind of avoid all those things. I can tell pretty much right off the bat if a client goes, well, I really want this and this. I'd be like, we'll just send you pictures when we get stuff.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to put you through it. I don't want to put me through it. Or them, for that matter.
Yeah. And that's why I usually, because I get a lot of inquiries, and I usually just say, I'm at these galleries.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out when the work comes in, and but yeah, and that's my hat's off to portrait painters that do that for a living, because boy, to have that all the time, especially with people and people's kids and the way they see themselves, it's like I couldn't handle that kind of probably the constant feedback, and well, can you change the the smile and the mouth, and
I can't even imagine.
So yeah,
and you have to be super good really as a portrait painter, because there's a lot out there, and if you want to be successful, you have to be at the very cream of the crop, I think, with those.
Yeah. Well, my one regret as an artist, and I'm still gonna do this, is I need to paint my kids. And
why they're still not,
and they're I've been saying this for 15, 20 years, and now they're growing up, but unfortunately, again, with everything going on, it's just like I'll keep having stuff come in, so I don't have the time to just produce that portrait. And the nice thing is, they're my kids, they're not going to say they don't like it, and I can do something that I want to do.
Yeah, well, and you're also getting in their braces and their clothes and their golf clubs and all that stuff by painting. So
yeah,
and you got 6 kids.
Yeah.
So and a job and galleries like myself that want things, and then all the other stuff that goes on top of it, like a Wes Anderson movie.
But this is the fun stuff, doing these shows with you. I've really, I've really enjoyed doing this work.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. And you're always on time with all the work, and you're a professional, man. Of course, I knew that the day I got that brochure. I go, this is a guy I want to work with. He can paint, and he's a professional. So, and you're priced very reasonably. I mean, you know, so buy them now, folks. The movie's coming out. You know, even then, you know, I say that in jest, but, you know, price structures do go up as you continue to find the bigger and bigger audience, which you have and which you will. And I know you're a person who's not going to make huge jumps on price, and I'm not either. We do things conservatively. But things like this are, I mean, it's a monumental thing for somebody of that quality to go, I want you to be my person for the art. When you have, you know, all these, the people in that show are just insanely, the actors are just insane.
Yep. Well, I think it's hard as an artist, you know, a lot of times, you know, I always hate the pricing game. It's a lot easier if somebody else can say, well, buy this, it's worth it. Because I think for me, you know, I think I know what I need to, you know, I need to provide for my family and stuff. But it is hard saying, you know, well, it's going to be X amount. But I know that, you know, you're not paying for, I mean, even though I can do a painting fairly quickly, you're paying for that 35 years of experience.
No, that's right. It's like a surgeon. You know, they can take out an appendix in a few minutes, and they can make the cut really quick and fast and do it. But they didn't do it overnight.
Yeah.
You should have seen them when they were a resident.
Yeah.
They didn't do it that way.
Yeah. So, you know, that's, you know, and I remember Gary Smith, you know, kind of talked to me one time. He was like, hey, you need to, you know, you really need to be, and this was after I was, you know, in your gallery. He was like, you know, you really are, you know, kind of I don't want to say I'm at the top because I still feel like there's a long way for me to go, but he was saying you're in good company. Right. You can ask for more.
Yes.
And I think that's, you know, probably the side of me. And that's why, you know, I think artists tend to be the people that are in the back of the room. We're not the ones out front saying, hey, you know, I'm the life of the party. I'm the one that deserves all this. We're the ones that are just like, I just want to go paint.
Right.
I want to have everything taken care of. And so it is hard saying, you know, yes, I'm, you know, I need to get this much, you know.
But you do. And I can see it. And when I see the work and what's out there and what you've done, I mean, your price structure will continue to go up as it should. And, you know, we got a lot more years to paint too. You and I've got at least another 20, 30 years. You know, if I drop out because of old age and death, I've got my son still in there ready to go.
That's good to hear. You know, I'm approaching, you know, well, I've been at my office for 30 years. And so I'm, you know, thinking about, you know, retirement's coming up in the next decade. And at least from that, but as a painter, you're never going to,
you'll never retire.
You're never going to retire. And I don't ever want to.
No, you probably have some of the most fun ever when you actually can paint full time instead of just, you know, when you can work it around your day job.
Yeah. I think I've been lucky though. I've been able to do this as a profession for so long. I think sometimes people think, well, I'll go do a career that I don't like. And then when I retire, I can do what I want and I'll do this painting. But I think, you know, it takes a long time to, I think, figure out who you are as an artist.
Sure, of course.
And kind of come up with a method of working that's, you know, where you can sustain it and you don't get burned out. And, you know, so, you know, so I'm, you know, I still feel like there's a lot ahead. Yeah,
I'm sure. And you do art probably 12 hours a day, I would imagine, you know, between your, you know, art director job and painting.
Yeah, I don't get as much painting as I would like, but I'm definitely, you know, involved in, you know, making design decisions or art decisions or, you know,
daily
stuff. Yeah. And,
hourly.
And that's, and I think there's a lot of crossover and I think that applies to paintings.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time because I know his kids are out waiting on him. Like, we want food. We just drove all the way from Utah. So it was very kind of you to take this time. But I thought it was important enough for us to do it where you're in town and not on Zoom. I much prefer this.
Nice to be in person. I was hoping you would have me do this in person. I wasn't sure because it's only been a couple years since you did the last interview, and I wasn't sure if you got all you needed from me.
No, apparently there's a Wes Anderson movie that came up in between those last 2 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to talk to you about that. So, David Meikle, and you can see his stuff at our gallery, and you know, go check it out. I don't know when this airs. I don't know how much we'll have, but we're hoping to have some new work right when this comes out. And so, yeah, go to the website.
I'll be working on it.
I know. All right, David Meikle, thank
Thank
you.
you. That was great.